from the first letter of Peter. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead.
So we've been in the book of 1 Peter on Sunday mornings, and we're going to continue that today. We'll be here in chapter 4 in the passage that Tim read. But before we get into the lesson, I do want to remind us of some upcoming events and announcements. These will be announced as well by Greg. But let me remind everybody, next week, we're going to be doing a potluck lunch and an Easter egg hunt. It's not Easter. I know it's technically kind of Palm Sunday, but we're leaving you Easter afternoon to spend time with your families. But this next Sunday, we're going to be doing a potluck lunch, so we need your help with this. In fact, I made a to-do list for you, right? Hold on. I had it. It is right there. Here's how you can help next Sunday. You need to come Sunday, so be here Sunday, next Sunday, and stay after. Don't go home yet. Okay? Bring food to share. We're going to make it work out on the church lawn, in the kitchen, and in room 3. We're going to pull off having a potluck even without fellowship hall access, so we can do that. Then we want to do an Easter egg hunt out on the lawn for the kids. We need you to bring pre-filled, or you fill them, Easter eggs with candy and toys. I don't know, put money in them. That'd be fun. But bring Easter eggs for people to find. And adults are like, I'll do that Easter egg hunt, right? But bring pre-filled Easter eggs for the Easter egg hunt, and then talk to people while you're there. Make friends and encourage others. So this next Sunday, we're going to be doing our potluck. We're going to be having an Easter egg hunt along with that. And my remote is really angry this morning. I'm going to have to stand like this to make it work. Also, Yosemite Bible Camp is coming up. That is July or June 28th through July 4th. Registration is already open for Bible Camp, so sign up now. The rates are cheaper to that till May 15th. And then with Bible Camp, if you're going to come as staff or you're interested in coming as staff, there is some new enhanced screening things we're going to be doing. Our background check platform that we were using is no longer going to work for us. We're going to be using LiveScan now and stuff, so there's some things that you have to do with that. See me if you have any questions about that. But today, though, we're going to be in 1 Peter chapter 4. So turn there, and I'm about ready to throw this remote because it's not working. All right, hold on here. My sermon today is very slide heavy, and if I don't have my remote, this isn't going to be good. I don't know what's going on there. All right. Well, Logan just blanked the screen. We'll make it work without it. So when we look at Christianity as a whole in our world today, you see different trends that come about. Probably about a decade, maybe 2 decades ago, there was really a big push among churches to try to be relevant. You hear buzzwords like relevancy, and there's things like the emerging church, postmodernism, all of that. But a lot of times what it was in general, it was churches trying to be cool in order to better reach people. Now, the motives behind that aren't necessarily bad. Wanting to reach people is good, and changing methodology and things like that to try to reach people isn't inherently evil or anything like that. But what happened along the way is churches kind of had a tendency to lose their identity and things. And I've come across a lot of articles recently where various theologians and things will come out with the cool church movement is dead. And now you'll see kind of a pendulum shift. And there's a lot of growth that is happening in churches that really aren't that cool. I mean, you see a growth in churches that maybe are considered more fundamentalist, more conservative in nature. You're seeing growth. A lot of movement toward things like orthodoxy and Catholicism, even things like Mormonism and Seventh-day Adventists, the ones that aren't always looked at as, this isn't a sermon to talk about all different churches, but that aren't usually seen as the most cool and hip, sometimes are seeing an increase in people along the way. And maybe what you're seeing is that with that, churches are losing their sense of who they are, their identity, and the world looks at them and they go, well, you're just like me, so why would I go to you if I already have what you're offering? Whereas this church over here seems very different. I'm going to better connect there. There's a Christian comedian by the name of John Crist, and you can look up this YouTube video he made where he takes church names and logos, and he makes a video game, or not a game, like a quiz game out of it. And the game is it a church or is it a marijuana store? You're like, what? Yeah, because the names people come up with are all usually the same. And the ones I had listed, this would have been on the screen behind me. Dream, marijuana store, church. Recreation, Elevate Life, Relief, Gateway, Higher Path. Those could all be church names, or they could all be weed stores, right? I mean, churches, there is no identifier so much anymore between us and the world, and people look at that and they go, well, maybe Christianity's not for me if it's just like what I'm already doing. And oftentimes what we do as the church is we become more and more like the world, and we convince ourselves that the way to reach the world is to be just like it. But the reality is, even churches, hey, there's my slide now, it's working. How did that happen? All right, the reality is churches that try to stay cool don't stay cool forever, and they end up, dying, they end up fizzling out and going on from there. Is my remote working, Logan, or is that you clicking? All right, hold on. I clicked right there and nothing happened. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go like this to you, and you're going to hit the space bar when it happens. So, ready? We're going to practice this right now. Boom. All right. That was cool. Okay. Anyway, cool churches can't stay cool forever. What was cool in the year 1960 is not cool in the year 1980. What was cool in 80 is not cool. The 90s are cool again, by the way, if you didn't know that. But cool churches can't stay cool forever. Statistically, see if we did it. Statistically, they don't last. So here's what happens then. The same thing that happens in churches happens to people. People try to stay relevant, they try to stay hip, they try to stay cool, and they end up not being cool forever, and they end up just looking kind of dorky. I remember being a young guy myself, and when I was young, I remember I did not like church clothes. Now, I think as a culture, we've gotten away from maybe stuffier church clothes, and I'm kind of happy with that, but I remember being a kid, my mom would always make you had to wear a dress shirt, you had to tuck it in when you go to church, and you had to wear dress shoes. And I remember I hated church clothes. But it wasn't so much that I hated wearing the nice clothes. I'd wear them other times. But I was embarrassed by the fact that after church, we'd go out to eat or go somewhere, and people would see me in my church clothes. I didn't want to be seen as someone that was going to church. Now, I know that's 12-year-old Cliff, that's not that big of a deal, whatever. But I remember that I would go into a back of we had a GMC Safari minivan, not a Chevy Astro. The GMC was better. And I'd go in the back of it, and I would change in the church parking lot. I'd untuck my shirt so it was long. I'd have my dress pants on, but you know what? They're kind of baggy. It was the 90s. But I'd bring shoes. And as long as I threw on some skate shoes or something, I could go out to McDonald's afterwards and not look like I went to church. And I was happy with it. I didn't want people to think I did it. But I remember one Sunday, I forgot the shoes. I brought a change of clothes, and my parents were going out to look at homes to buy. We went like house shopping, like that's weird, right? We'd go to look at model homes because my parents were planning on buying a house. And I remember we went to all these different model homes, and I'm wearing my jeans, I'm wearing my t-shirt that I packed and ready to wear, and I had to wear my dress shoes the entire time. Wasn't fooling anybody. They still knew I went to church. But I think a lot of us are trying to hide the fact that we are a Christian. People in the world are not impressed when you are just like them, but they will take notice when you are different. People will look at you and they will see when you act differently from them. People will notice what you do and they will notice what you don't do. And our key idea that we've been emphasizing over and over again in these lessons is holiness. When you live a holy life, it will become visible and people will notice it. So the lesson today is going to be about the need to live different lives. Quit trying to be like the world. Quit trying to make churches like the world. Let's try to be different for the sake of being different in order to reach lots of people. And our passage this morning is 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. So if you haven't already done it, open up there. That's going to be our passage. And what you're going to see in this passage is the need for us to live different lives. The whole book of 1 Peter has been about holiness. Holiness in how you interact with the government. Holiness how you talk to your brethren. Holiness in your marriages. Holiness on the job. Holiness in the world. Holiness in the midst of suffering. Over and over again, the world's going to look at us and they're going to go, wow, you're different. Why are you acting this way? And as we talked about 2 weeks ago, it's going to be a way for us to talk about the hope that we have. So let's look at our first passage. 1 Peter chapter 4, starting in verse 1, what you're going to see here is that once you work to change your mindset, your lifestyle will follow. Let's read. He says, therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude. Whose attitude? The attitude of Jesus. So he says, in the same way that Jesus suffered in his body, you take on that same kind of attitude. A willingness to suffer, a willingness to endure, and they've already done that. So what Peter's doing is he's mentioning, you're already like Jesus. You're already suffering like Jesus. They were. There was persecution going on. There was hate toward Christians. There was violence toward Christians. They were suffering. Peter says, you're already doing that, so you have this attitude. And then he says, because whoever suffers in the body, so that's our life right now, if you're willing to suffer, he says, is done with sin. Think about what he's telling the brethren here. He says, you've gone through so much already, be done with sin. Why would you suffer if you're still going to sin? Why would you suffer for Jesus if you're still going to live the old way of life? So he says, if whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. And then he says, as a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for human desires, but rather for the will of God. As your attitude shifts, your actions will follow. Peter says, since you've already suffered with Jesus, just keep going all in for him. Live for him. Live the rest of your life according to the will of God. He's writing to Christians here that are suffering. But even though they're suffering, they're still dabbling in sin. They're still falling back into the old way of living. They're still kind of having one foot in the world a little bit, trying to be like it. And Peter says, look, you've already suffered. Go all in. Get rid of the sins. Live for him. Live the rest of your life in this earth for the will of God. But he goes on. Look at the next passage. Verse 3. He says, for you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do. He goes, you've already done it. He said, you already used to live this way. Pagans, idol worshipers, people outside of the faith. He says, you've already spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do. You've already done it, so why are you still doing it? And then he describes the things that they used to do. He says, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, detestable idolatry. He talks about sins of action, sins of the heart, and sins of religion, basically, kind of in all of this. But kind of the vibe we get from all of these words that he mentions is giving into whatever desire you have. Debauchery is kind of just every kind of, sexual desire you're giving into. Lust, we understand what lust is, right? Drunkenness and, getting drunk, that makes sense. Orgies, carousing, drunkenness, these are all kind of looped together. Think about like some kind of crazy frat party kind of idea. It's like, we're going to get together, we're going to get high, we're going to get drunk, and we're going to sleep with everyone. He says, that's what you used to do. And you were also following detestable idolatry. He says, you've already spent enough time living that way. You've already sinned enough. It's time to stop. It's time to be holy, is the message that Peter is preaching. And the reason why they need to make sure that they don't act like the world, because just like Christians today, just like us, we have this tendency to try to come to Jesus, but still live the way we used to live and be just like everybody else. We want to not let people know that we actually do believe in Jesus, like me trying to hide my church shoes. But look what he says in the next verse. Let's look at the next one. He says, they are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse upon you. So he says the world's going to notice when you're different. We spend so much time as Christians trying to hide what makes us different. We don't want to be seen weird. We don't want to act like, well, if we say we're different, they're going to think we're judging them. Or they're going to think we're better than them. On the flip side, I think people will respect it when you actually live according to your convictions. I remember I've always been amazed with certain religious groups that do that have maybe some extreme convictions, but they actually live them out. I've always been intrigued like the Amish. I'm like, hey, they're going all in. I don't agree with their, 15th century colonial doctrine or whatever it was, but like they're living it. We like, good for them, right? Even in society today, people look at those in Islam with sometimes with admiration in the sense that, wow, they don't eat what they're not supposed to eat. They pray when they're supposed to pray, and they don't care if it makes them look weird in society. They're like, And I think that's why people gravitate towards sometimes these more extreme religious or more outlandish religious movements or ones that seem countercultural. It's because at least it seems like they're dedicated. But then we over here in kind of the Western Christian church, we have a tendency to go, well, the way we're going to reach the world is let's make sure people don't think we're different at all. No, 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 no. You can do all the same things you've still been doing. You can talk the way you used to talk. You can live the way you used to live. You can consume the media you used to consume. No, just call yourself a Christian. As long as you change your Instagram bio, now you're okay. But that's not what Peter says here. Peter says they are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse upon you. Now, these guys here were abusing them for it, but they noticed. They're like, wow, you're not like us. You are different. And notice what he mentions. They are seeing it. They are observing it. The world will notice when you are different. Next slide, Logan. There you go. They will notice when you're different. The people will see what you do. Holiness will become visible. Now look at the next verse, verse 5. He says, but they will have to give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. You can imagine what these Christians are going through here. They've been suffering. They left their sinful lives behind, and now they have this temptation to go back in. But Peter says, don't do that. And then they're like, yeah, but people are abusing us. They're mocking us. They're saying that we're not cool, right? He says, hey, they're going to have to give an account for how they act. They're going to have to give an account to the one who is going to judge the living and the dead. Next slide. He says in the same passage in another translation, he says, of course your former friends are surprised when you no longer plunge into the flood of wild and destructive things they do. So they slander you. But remember that they will have to face God, who stands ready to judge everyone, both the living and the dead. What's Peter saying? He's saying, don't try to hide the fact that you're a Christian. We shouldn't try to hide the fact that we're Christians. We should be different from the world because the world is watching us. So what's the message for us? The message for us this morning is let the world see that you don't do the things you used to do. Show the world that you're different. Don't be ashamed that you're not the same person you used to be. Be proud to tell somebody, hey, you know what? I don't do that anymore. I don't go there anymore. I don't watch that anymore. I don't live like that anymore. I'm not perfect. I'm trying. I still struggle. But I'm not the same person anymore. Let the world see that. And when you do that, what's going to happen? You're going to be holy. Isn't that the whole theme we've been looking at in this entire sermon series? Or our key verse, verse 15. It says, but just as he who called you is holy, be holy in all that you do. So this morning, the application of the lesson is simple. Let the world see the things you don't do. Make it clear that you don't live like the world. No, not in a braggadocious way, not in a self-righteous way, not like, well, I don't do that, none of that kind of stuff. But make it clear that you don't go to that party. Make it clear you don't watch that show. Make it clear you don't talk that way. Make it obvious that you don't participate in that kind of deception. Make it clear that, no, I don't believe it's right for someone to be living with someone they're not married to, or be sleeping around, or looking at pornography, or talking that way, or gossiping, or making fun of somebody, or being greedy, or being angry. Make it clear that that's not how you live. Because why? Because you want to be holy in all that you do. I think sometimes we get so afraid of talking about the things we don't do. We're like, well, the church shouldn't be known for the things it doesn't do, only the things it does. I get the gist behind that statement. However, we should also be known for the things that we don't do, the things that are sinful, the things that are wrong. We don't participate in those because we're trying to be holy. The lesson is yours this morning. I know Andrew's going to lead us in a song here in just a moment. My encouragement to you is make holy choices. Make sure you don't give in to the sins of your past. And if you fall back into those, keep coming back to Jesus. If you're here and you're not a Christian, we want to help you become one. We can study with you, pray with you, teach you more about Jesus. We can baptize you into Jesus Christ. We want to help you live a holy life for him. Talk to somebody. But right now, let's stand and let's sing.